So tonight we're thrilled to welcome you here. We're going to hear from Green Play that will talk about the results from our Park Master Plan public participation process and what we found out from that. We have the YMCA here to give you an update on what's going on in South Meridian in that term. But I'm going to kick you off. I just concluded a listening tour. We break our city up into different sections and invite stakeholders in each of those sections to come and share with us their thoughts. So I understand that I don't know how to do this. There we go.
You need to click first and get the box done.
Okay. Okay, Ken can do that.
He's so cute.
I feel like one of those, I am so technology inclined, not. But I did want to share with you what we heard. And what we did is we asked our citizens to give us feedback from the survey results that we got in 2014. We wanted to kind of test it to see if this was really what they felt was still relevant. Yep.
Oops. Can you just do the down arrow?
Just a bit early. Right here, man. You're gonna hit this right here.
Okay,
Just hit that right.
thank you. I just had to get that off. Okay, now you see what I'm really lacking. As we ask people to introduce themselves, how long they've been in our community, and what representation they were there for, we did ask them to share what they liked about our community. And this was consistent across the board. What we have summarized up here, and I am not sure where I'm supposed to stand so everyone can see, but in terms of the safe community, our emergency responders were certainly noted for the quality services, for the response times, and for the attitude and culture of our public safety responders. They love their neighbors. We have a very friendly community, and they really appreciated that. Our park system, hands down, everyone feels it's the best in the nation. We agree. So we started off on the really good footing because we agreed with them. The next question that we asked is that was mirrored in our city survey. So what is the single most important item facing the City of Meridian? This is what we got from the city survey. In our listening tours, and there were some differences depending on where you lived. But for the most part, all of our listening tour sessions, they agreed with these top 5. And then they added 2, or they drew out, they defined it to a more specific type of comment. And so top of that was kind of on the heels of our school bond passing, and it was how to pay for school growth without bonds. They wanted us to use the same tools that we use to pay for our parks, our police, and our fire, and the state allows us impact fees to do that. They don't allow schools impact fee use. So they like to see us start to be an aggressive advocate for that. Pathways came up time and time again, and you're going to hear the pathway theme all evening. But they wanted a connected pathway system. There were some concern in just one particular area of the density of housing. No, I think there were actually two listening tours that we did with the high density housing. And once we had a conversation about housing choices, and not everyone wants a single-family house with a yard, they had a better understanding of it. So this was what we found. It was validated what we heard from the city survey, and much of this is being used as we develop and refine our strategic plan that we're now working with our city council on. The second question was the top priorities for investment by the city. And many of our respondents had questions about what some of this meant. In particular, everyone had a question about what communications are. And that communication thing is really, how can we better communicate with you? And how do our citizens get their information? There's different preferences among almost everyone. And so that one is going to continue to be a focus of the city and how we can better get you the information that you're looking for. Then they elaborated on some of this in terms of, again, what you saw in the previous question, but really the flow of traffic, the emphasis on our teens, on our youth, and making sure that we're planning for our future. And the last survey question that we asked is, what is the most important investment in transportation? And pathways, hands down, number one. I was surprised that some really crowded streets didn't get mentioned, because there was so much conversation on connecting our pathway system and connecting our sidewalks. I think all of our favorite transportation projects got set aside because of the conversation we had on that. But needless to say, Linder Road overpass did rise to the top, and they want to see improved north-south connectivity. But I think another often heard idea was that east-west connection and how we can better use the railroad corridor for a Boise Greenbelt. Now, I would call it a brown belt on the railroad, but it's that thing. And public transportation came up, but not for the reason that many think, because there's frustration about the public transportation system that's currently serving the valley. You're sitting in the same traffic as everyone else. They want to see a more robust transportation system for our seniors and our disabled. So if we can really focus on that, it would make a more meaningful impact. The next question we asked is, what would get you to do more in our downtown? There's a lot going on, and about the time we started having these conversations, we really had some good press about a performing arts center, an event center, and the opportunity that is presenting itself right now because of many venues looking to serve the west side of Ada County. So that was part of the conversation. Certainly they want something that happens after 9 o'clock in our downtown. So if I come down and I dine out, then what? I want to have dessert. I want to go listen to jazz. So those were some of the conversations. This one had a real serious conversation as well. People have wanted a farmer's market in Meridian for some time. This has been very difficult because there are many markets in the valley that are very successful. So by using what our focus is in Meridian on youth, is there's a focus on a youth market and working with many of our youth-oriented organizations like 4-H, FFA, Violent or Family and Consumer Studies, and some of our faith organizations and community garden organizations, that would be a natural for our downtown. This is the tip of the iceberg in some of the conversations, but it shows what some of those conversations were, and just gave a nice concluding part in people like where they live, they love their neighbors, they love their neighborhoods, and the community within the community feel. They, for the most part, agreed with the survey results, which was what we were looking for. That validation that survey did speak for the community at large. Pathways was certainly the most common denominator in the whole conversation, to have connectivity and to have off-road safe pathways for our kids, our families, and our workforce to commute on. And in our downtown, they wanted more activities, more dining choices, and hands down, even though everyone liked the village, they also saw the need that the heart of the community needs to be healthy. And a downtown is different than the village. It's more hometown. And we had a vast agreement on the validating the activities that are moving forward in our downtown, but also a desire for more. So now I will end and turn this over to Mr. Steve Sitaway, our Parks Director, the Director of Fun.
Well, thank you for being here tonight. This is great. Like she said, my name is Steve Sitaway. I'm the Meridian Parks and Recreation Director, and I'm really pleased that we get to share with you tonight the results of our public surveys that have been out as part of our Park System Master Plan update. I'm curious if anyone in the audience is someone who has taken our survey and we're here to see what the results were. If you were, would you raise your hand? Oh, several. Excellent. So, great. So we start with, there are several of you that are familiar with the survey. Let me just tell you a little bit of background of why we're even doing it. So we have a park system master plan today that is 10 years old, now almost 11. And it's meant to be a 10-year look, and it's really time to update it. It's a great read. I encourage you all to take a look at it if you get a chance, because I love the fact that you can look at it and say, we have accomplished so much of what's in that plan. We set a course. We have grown like crazy over the last decade, and our park system has grown along with that plan. But it's time to set a new vision and direction for the next decade. And I'm very excited about that, because this is kind of the stuff that makes me tick as the Parks and Rec Director, to know where we're headed and what our priorities are as a community. To help us figure that out, we have hired a company called Greenplay, and we have Art Thatcher and Dave Peterson here from Greenplay that'll be presenting tonight. I won't steal all the thunder, but I will tell you the response from this community on the survey has been nothing short of amazing. Art will tell you, nationally they look for a response rate of 8 or 9% as being their goal and really good. As of a week and a half ago, we already had a 20% response rate on our statistically valid survey with 700 responses and over 350 responses to the open link survey that anyone can take. And if anyone here leaving tonight wants to leave and go take the survey, it's still open and will be until the 15th of May. So you have a couple more weeks to take that survey, and we would encourage you to do that if you haven't already. With that, I will turn the rest of the time over to Art to lead us through a discussion of what the results of that survey are telling us today.
Thank you, Steve. As Steve said, I'm Art Thatcher. I'm the project manager with Greenplay, and Dave Peterson is here with me tonight. He is one of the project managers from Design Concepts. They're one of the landscape design firms that work with us on these master plan projects. I also have Pat O'Toole, who is here. Pat's kind of over in the back corner. He's also with Greenplay. And then Tim Warren, who is with Brecken Land Design, who's helping us with the kind of the second phase of this, which is doing some conceptual designs on a couple of your vacant pieces of property for park designs. And so I'll apologize up front. I'm going to show you some graphs that are going to have some small print on them, but these PowerPoint slides will be available online after the meeting. I'm going to turn it over to the city, and so they'll be available online for you to see a little bit tighter and be able to see a little bit closer. So if those of you that are in the way back want to move up a little bit before I get started, you're welcome to, or I'll just try and explain them the best I can. And so tonight, what we want to do is we want to talk a little bit about, I'll give you a little overview of the master planning process, talk a little bit about demographics, our survey results. Dave will come up and talk about the level of service here. Design Concepts has done an inventory and has looked at the level of service, which is the kind of the area of the components in the parks. We'll talk about some key issues that have come up, some reoccurring themes, and then some preliminary recommendations. And then we'll be open to some questions and answers. So we started back in the fall of last year with our startup meeting. We were here and did community input. We held focus groups, had some interviews, and did some stakeholder meetings. We've got Mind Mixer, which is up, which is a community engagement forum. You can go to Meridian Mind Mixer and go on, and there are topics that are there that you can be engaged in that will go on through a large part of this process. And then we did the survey. As I said, Dave and Design Concepts have done our grasp inventory, looked at the level of service. We're here tonight doing the presentation for our findings. And then tomorrow we're meeting with the project team to kind of start some visioning of next steps, looking down at those recommendations. We're also, following that, we'll be looking at organizational and maintenance analysis, putting a draft report together with recommendations, and then doing the final plan. So you can see the schedule has this going out into the fall before we kind of finish up the project. So our focus groups. We had 125 people participate in 8 focus groups. We did interviews with the elected officials, and then we had a town hall meeting to discuss the results of those focus groups. So kind of looking at the demographics. For 2015, kind of from the Compass demographics, your population is 94,000. Number of households is 31,555. Your average household is just under 3 people per household. The median age is just over 33 years old, and your median household income is right at $60,000. So one of the things we look at is kind of projecting out, and you can see that from the 2000 to the 2010 census, your population basically doubled. In 2015, again from the Compass projections, your population is at 94,289. In 5 years, it's projected to grow to 108,700, and then in 2025, looking to grow to 115,000. So you're a rapidly growing community. So one of the things that we look at is kind of the population projections by age. Because in a lot of cases when people talk about Parks and Recreation master plans and master planning, really youth and young people are a major focus of that, and seniors become a major focus of that. Well, what we also need to keep in mind is that the majority of your population is in this 25 to 55 age group. And will kind of remain as a percentage of the population in that age group. So it's a group that you don't want to lose focus of. They're very active, they have a lot of discretionary spending, and they're looking for opportunities for recreation. So the survey, as Steve said, we mailed out 35 randomly selected surveys. They were pretty evenly distributed throughout the regions of the community. We mailed them out the beginning of April. After they'd been out for a couple of weeks, we did the open link survey. And then as of the 20th, we had 700 returns. That wasn't a rounded up number, it just happened to be we had 700. So we had a 20% return, which is just phenomenal. I mean, we are ecstatic to, as Steve said, to kind of be in that 8-9% range. But, this is a great return, plus another 379 from the open link. As Steve said, the open link is still available. So if you haven't taken the survey and you'd like to go online and take it, we encourage you to do that. It's meridiansurvey.com
Meridiansurvey.org.
/open.
Yep.
Yep. So we'll have that link available on the website as well. So, as I said, it's a little small and some of it's a little washed out. So we asked demographics of those folks that are participating in the survey. And this top block, the left-hand side, are those that got the mailed survey. We did the random selected kind of statistically valid piece, which is the mailed survey, and then the open link, and we kind of keep those separate. So you'll see that the average age of those folks that participated in the open link was 60 years old, where the average age of those that participated in the open link that was 46, or 46, I'm sorry. So, you can see that, there is a kind of the 45 to 75 age group makes up, about 70%, and of the mailed survey, where it's, more in the younger age group, that 35 to 55 age group. So we also asked about kind of the makeup of the households, and so the majority of those respondents in the mailed survey were couples with no children any longer at home, which kind of makes sense. The average age is 60. Children have probably moved out of the house. They're kind of out on their own. There's also about 28% of those were couples with children in the home, where for the open link, 61% of those had children in the household. And so, then we looked at kind of average income, asked about household income. For the mailed survey, average income was about $81,000, where the open link was almost at $100,000 was the average income for those folks. So then we talked about how long had you been in, we asked it, how long have you lived in Meridian? And again, it makes sense that, that the majority of those were, that the average was 20 for the mailed survey. If the average age is 60, they've probably been here a while, established. And then the open link was almost 12%, 12 years kind of living in the community. Then we also we asked where you lived. And we had divided the community up into South Meridian, which was south of I-84, Central, between 84 and Cherry Lane, Fairlawn, Northwest, and west of Meridian Road, north of Cherry Lane, and then the Northeast, which is east of Meridian and north of Fairlane. And you can see of the mailed survey, the vast majority were from South Meridian and Central Meridian. So, almost 90%. Where the open link, the majority were from the Northwest and the Northeast. And, not sure what the anomaly is there, but it just seemed to be those folks that were interested in participating and sending back in the mailed survey. So then we asked about the importance of Parks and Recreation to both the open link as well as to the mailed survey. And the top line is the mailed survey, and the bottom line is the yellow survey. And you can see where I've circled that very important. 63% of those that participated in the open link survey felt that the opportunity for Parks and Recreation was very important, and 38% of the mailed survey. And so that the average was almost a 4, so important to very important, where with the open link, that average was 4.5, so more towards that very important. One of the things that we know is that through the mailed survey is really the only way that we can reach non-users because it's randomly done. With the open link, we kind of blasted that out through the city's their email services and through the departments their registration emails, and so you kind of get more users in that group. However, if you look, we asked if those participants had registered for a program in the last 12 months. 90% of those that participated in the mailed survey said no, they had not. And 66% of the open link had not. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're not participating, that they're not doing things, because they rate the importance of Parks and Recreation, the opportunity for Parks and Recreation, very high. And so they may not be taking a class, but they're using your parks, they're using the pathways, they're using the other programs, your picnic shelters and those things.
Art, can we also point out that the scores of like 3.9, 4.5, that's out of 5, not out of 10, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so we asked about, kind of how they're kind of to rate the service on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being excellent, 1 being poor, and you can see that the averages were above the 4, so very good to excellent, with both of the survey respondents. So we asked them to identify the 3 facilities or parks that they use the most. And you can see that that Settlers Park, with both surveys, was the number 1 most used, followed by Kleiner and by Story Park. And so those are your kind of your regional, your more themed parks. Makes sense. But as you look down, kind of some of the anomalies. If you look here with the open link, that Heroes Park kind of is at 14%, and Heritage Middle School ball fields is at 12%. Again, kind of keeping in mind that this is a younger median age, more children in the household, so they're probably using those for the athletic fields and their active uses. So then we ask about the importance of facilities and programs operated by Meridian. And so you can see that pathways, as was noted in the earlier survey that you all did, pathways rated up as number 1. Again, importance on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very important, 4 being important. You can see that pathways with both groups was the number 1 at above a 4, so above important. Picnic shelters was up there, playgrounds, community recreation center was there. Again, as you kind of look down, again looking at the open link, you'll see youth sports was was a 4.0, very important, and athletic fields, at a 3.8. So you see the kind of the more active, and it gives us a good feel for the importance that folks see. So then we asked about need. So one was importance, and then we asked about the need. And you can see that there is is your need being met? And so on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the need is being met completely, and then 4 being somewhat. You can see that playgrounds rated as a 4. So there, the needs being met, ball fields, picnic shelters, athletic fields. You can drop down again to the open link and see that tennis courts at a 3.7. So they're all kind of all of the programs and facilities that we talked about are all kind of meeting the needs of the community at this point. And so what we do is we take the importance and we take the need being met and we plot it on this matrix. You can see the upper left-hand corner is there's a high importance to the family, but there's a low need being met. The upper right-hand is a high importance and a high need being met. So really you want to be kind of moving above the midline and towards the right-hand corner. And so as you look down, kind of these low importance, low need being met the rodeo grounds, the dog park. Either it's something that you can look at as either divesting in or moving, kind of repurposing or doing something along those lines to kind of move it above the line and shift it over. And so then we also asked about programs. That was facilities, and we looked at programs. And you can see that kind of in that lower importance need being met, there's really not a lot there. The teen programming and youth camps is kind of moving towards the midline and up towards that upper right-hand quadrant. So, where there's some high importance is around this outdoor adventure programming. Need to kind of put some more emphasis in that to be able to move that need being met more towards the high end, as well as adult non-sports programming. So looking at we asked the respondents what the number one issue the Parks and Recreation should focus on improving. And again, number one, right up there, is pathway connectivity. Seems to be is the number one issue. And I'll tell you, from what we've seen across the country, in the surveys that we have, pathways is number one or number two in every survey that we do, every community that we have. It is of highest importance to the members of the community. Safety and security was number two. You can see more from the mailed survey than from the open link survey. Family-oriented activities, very important to number one issue with the open link. Again, if you think about the demographics, the majority of them had children in the household. So kind of looking at those family-oriented programs. Developing new parks, 9% in the open link, 7% in the mailed survey. So then we asked about, what would make your participation greater? What could the department address that would make your participation greater? And you see awareness of the program's communication, or that also came up in your other survey that the mayor was talking about earlier. And again, nationally, we hear communication all the time as one of the top issues. People will constantly say, well, I didn't know about it. And, we still haven't found that magic bullet to kind of solve that communication issue. I know one of the stories that was told earlier is, there was an event that the Parks and Recreation Department had it on Facebook 3 or 4 times, advertising it out there. After the event was over, posted some pictures of the event and had some comments of, oh, this looks really great. I wish I'd have known about it. So it's like, you got that notice, on Facebook. So, it's one of those things that you're constantly working on and trying to improve. Shade was number 2. We heard that through the focus groups as well. Shade in the parks and those issues. Additional facilities and amenities, and then parking. It's perception that there's not enough parking for events at the parks. So importance of indoor and outdoor facilities to be added, expanded, or improved. Again, right up there at number 1, pathways and trails. It's a reoccurring theme here. Also, shade structures in the parks as number 2 with both groups. Improved parks amenities, and then community center, kind of community recreation center, and then an indoor athletic facility were those that ranked up there very high. Playgrounds were very, very important to the open link, 3.8%. Lighting of outdoor athletic facilities, again, showed some importance with the open link. Again, they're using those parks where there are athletic facilities, and so having that ability there, as well as the new parks at 3.8%. So then, what are the 3 most important priorities? And so you can see pathways and trails. The first color is people ranked it as the highest priority. The middle color is their second highest priority, and then the third is the third highest priority. And so you can see pathways and indoor aquatics facilities ranked number 1 and 2, both in the highest priority as well as the kind of the total of priorities. Shade structures comes back up. The community recreation center and then improvement to park amenities and dog parks. But you also see, kind of as you drop down, new parks has some high importance, and as well as outdoor athletic fields. So we asked about what the household needs were for new programs. Whether the household was in need in any of the following programs. And you can see community events, festivals, parades, outdoor concerts. 69% of the people in the mailed survey said that there was a need there in their household. And one of the things that we find kind of nationally as we look at trends and look at programming is because people are so busy and their lives are so active that the old recreation model of 4-week, 6-week, 8-week classes once a week are kind of giving way to these one-time events, these festivals and events. They tend to be more family-oriented. They tend to not be as large a commitment. They happen over a longer period of time during the day. So you have the option to come in and come out if you've got other activities going on. So we see that trend nationally with community events. Fitness and wellness programs is also, one of those that we see nationally that is really kind of one of those top programs that folks want to add, especially with this mailed survey in that demographic of the 60-year-olds. As you look at the baby boomers, they're not looking to go to a senior center and sit and play cards or sit and play pinochle. They are more active. They're looking for fitness and wellness opportunities. They're looking for adventure opportunities to get out and do things. And so those are there. Senior programs, again, ranks up there, and adult non-sports programs, kind of as your top 4. So then the top 3 most important programs, again, you can see kind of in that same, most important, second most important, third most important, still falls in. Senior programs is still in there, community events, fitness and wellness. The senior programs and the fitness and wellness kind of switch places there, as well as swim lessons and aquatic programs. We're ranked up there very high. So then we ask about preferred method of getting information. Not how you currently get it, but what's your preferred method of getting it. And so the top line is the mailed survey. The bottom line is the open link. And you can see the local media. 63% of those from the mailed survey like to get their information from the local media. We still read the newspaper. Okay. However, if you look at the open link, 71% prefer to get theirs through emails. They're more electronically engaged. Get it through emails. Also, if you look at this group, emails, internet website, social media, are their top 3 ways of getting information. You see the Meridian activity guide, gets a good response from both groups. So we asked about, the current fees that are being charged for both for current facility fees, and then the right-hand side is program fees. And so your responses were fees are priced for the value that you receive. And you can see there, that there wasn't a whole lot of response there. Fees are acceptable for the value that we receive. And then fees are too high, about 7% with both. But the interesting piece, and kind of go back to have you registered for a program in the last year? 90%, 66% said no. It makes sense that don't know or unsure as to whether they're too high, too low, or up there in the 64, 65%, 40, 34%. So then we asked you about investing $100. If you had $100 to invest, how would you invest it towards towards a list of opportunities? And so adding more pathways, almost 20% of that $100, people would invest towards adding more pathways. $19, $17. Same with making improvements to renovate, maintain existing parks and facilities. So that theme of maintaining what we have, keeping it good and in workable shape, expanding aquatics, and then adding new parks. Again, you can see with that open link survey, recreation center, gym space, related activities, jumps up, the $10 here, and then adding athletic fields and courts, investing $13 of that $100 towards those activities.
Hi, Tom.
So I'm going to turn it over to Dave, let him give you something.
So I got the fun part. I get to go to all these cities across the country, and I get to go visit all your parks. I went out to every one of your parks in town. Here you can see me in Charleston, South Carolina, adding data on an iPad. So we do it all in GIS. We go out and look at each park, look what's in the park. We're really interested about what's in your parks, not necessarily just the boundary of the park. We looked at 22 Meridian Parks, 10 indoor facilities, including some school gyms like this. We looked at 9 alternative providers. And we did some assumed scoring and locating of some HOA parks. We also looked at where are the HOA parks, where are the homeowner associations providing parks or neighborhood level of service in their homeowners, in their neighborhood. Things that Meridian itself is not actually providing. So we took into account that Meridian is providing some parks, and there are some other parks out there that people are using. This is a map of the system that isn't showing up very well on this. But this kind of shows how the parks and facilities are distributed around the city. Again, I put everything in GIS, and we have a nice little atlas that Steve's going to get at the end of our project that has a map for each park and a data sheet for each park. So it lists everything that's in that park. We look at things that we call components. And a component is something you would go to a park to use. So a playground or a ball field or a picnic shelter. We also look at things that we call comfort and convenience modifiers, which are things that make your stay at a park better. So think of a park that you might go to that's just a playground and nothing else. And then think of a park that you go to that has a playground and has shade and has a restroom and has benches and has parking. And our system called GRASP really looks at the quality of those elements within a park and says that a park that has shade and restrooms and picnic tables and those things provide a higher level of service, allow me to go and stay longer and do more things than a park that's just a simple playground. So looking at your system, these were some of the things that I noticed when I was out looking at your parks. Steve's staff does a great job of maintaining the parks. The parks are pretty well distributed across the city. We've kind of laughed about this, but there's a definite distinction between kind of these larger community parks and the things that they offer, and then a neighborhood park in your city. And all the neighborhood parks seem to have the same elements. I kind of knew when I got to a neighborhood park. That's good, though. They're good neighborhood parks. They just all have the same thing, so I know exactly when I was at a neighborhood park. One thing I did notice that these neighborhood parks really lack a sense of identity. So they were all kind of the same type of park, the same types of elements, but didn't really announce that you're in this neighborhood or you're in that neighborhood, or that there's something special or unique about that park, as opposed to the larger community parks, which tended to have a more themed element or something that really drew people to there, or they knew when they were at Settlers Park, or they knew when they were at Kleiner Park. Great restrooms, probably some of the best restrooms that I've seen across the country. Obviously, I noticed, and we've heard it several times now, that the trail system is disconnected. The pathways are disconnected. You have some segments of trails that allow people to get out and walk and exercise, but really that sense of a connected trail system is not there. I also noticed that when I went to several of the HOA parks, that there's a great variety. So you have some very high-end subdivisions and some other subdivisions that provide some HOA parks or some developer-type parks, but they're not always equal. So how do we kind of equal that playing field if we're not providing? What do we do to kind of make sure that we're getting some sort of standard in that park development? And also that schools are very important in providing at least some level of service. We know that schools and school grounds are not open during the school day to people to use, but they're often open at night or for programming, fields, gymnasiums. So how does that factor into our system? We all know that not all parks are created equal, and we've seen the HOA park in the upper left-hand corner. Sorry. You know, a developer puts a playground out in a field and calls it a park. And then the City of Meridian goes in and puts in a nice playground, same structure actually, but puts in the restroom and the shade and the pads, and so it's what this system, our system of grasp, really recognizes that not all parks are created equal. And we do a scoring system. We look at the quality, we look at those comfort and convenience things that really tell us where are the best parks in town.
Just remind them, that's not in Meridian.
This is not in Meridian.
We knew that.
So when we put all these scores in the computer, in our GIS, we create a system of maps that really looks at where the level of service is. What this really looks at is what do I have access to from where I live or where I'm at, where I work. So it may be that I have access to one great park like Kleiner Park or Settlers Park, or I may have access to two smaller neighborhood parks and the community center. I may be downtown and I have access to a couple different little plazas and a nice little pocket park, we might call it downtown. So really think of these maps as what do I have access to from where I live. The colors on the map indicate that the higher the level of service, the darker the orange gradient. On this map, I included all the Meridian things in orange and all the alternative providers, all the HOAs, all the ward parks, all of these other what we call alternative providers, people that are providing recreation opportunities are in this blue shade. So again, kind of the key to this map is the darker the orange, the higher the level of service. The more I have access to, and the better stuff I have access to. What those orange gradients and blue gradients don't tell you is what should that level be. So we try and estimate what should people have access to. For Meridian, we looked at two typical neighborhood parks in your system. So the idea is that everybody in town should have access to a neighborhood park and a trail. Heard a lot again about trails, and people want access to trails. So what people have access to a neighborhood park and a trail. This map shows us in purple kind of where that number value lies for those people having at least that amount of access. We think of the areas in yellow as areas of opportunity. Those people have access to something. It's just not quite up to the level that we think it should be. And again, the blue is down below. We can't quite see what's going on there. But we know that there's stuff going on here. We know that Fuller Park is here and providing a pretty high level of service in that area. So if we take away the yellow, we take away where we're providing something but somebody else is providing service also, we see that there's a bright blue underneath there. So that's a pretty high level of service in that area. This helps to get to this idea of we don't want to duplicate service. We don't want to put a park right across from an HOA park and say, you know, that we need to provide service there if somebody else is providing service. That kind of brings up the question, what if people don't care who's providing that park? I just want to know what I have access to. What can I go use. So this map kind of puts everything together, puts all those HOA parks together, puts all of those alternative providers together, puts all the Meridian stuff in the same analysis, and shows us kind of what the overall level of service is for Meridian. Again, purple is good. These people have access to, theoretically enough stuff. The yellow is areas of opportunity. Somebody's providing service there. It's just not quite at the level that we think it should be. Areas in gray, which are kind of on the fringes of the city, those people, if there's anybody that even lives there, have to travel further than a mile to get to their recreation. I didn't put up as many graphs and tables as Art, but I did do one. This shows that 76% of Meridian is purple. And I think that's something we should really celebrate, is that we have a very high level of service kind of across 75% of the city. 22% is that yellow, and only 2% of inside the city boundaries have to go further than a mile to get to their recreation opportunities. So I think we should applaud that we're providing such a high level of service. Again, some general kind of findings from that series of maps. Overall, we see parks all over the city. It's well distributed. Level of service is very high. Lots of purple if we have access to a car. So what happens if we don't have access to a car? We talked a little bit about public transportation and getting some people to these opportunities. Again, over 75% are above threshold. And the final thing that these alternative providers, schools, HOAs, and these other providers provide an important supplement to the city's level of service in neighborhood parks and recreation. So what if we don't have a car? What if I want to walk to a park? So our analysis looks at a 15-minute walk, which is approximately a half mile. It's actually a pretty slow walk if we were to go out and walk. But that takes into account having to, if you live in a cul-de-sac, you have to go around the corner. So anyway, 15-minute walk. Again, the darker the orange, the higher the level of service. This map is showing both Meridian in orange and alternative providers in blue. So we see walkability is a little bit different. We see a lot of yellow. And this, I think, really has to do with the disconnectedness of the trail system. And we really need that connected trail system to turn a lot of those areas purple. Again, we can show that some of these blue areas are showing us some level of service where we are providing it and somebody else is providing it, trying to avoid duplication of service. But again, what if we don't care who's providing our level of service? I just want to be able to walk to a neighborhood park. I just want to be able to walk and get on a trail and go for a run or go walk my dog. So it looks a little bit better. But again, I think this really gets back to this connected trail system, connected path system, and how can we improve our level of service? How can we turn those yellow areas purple? And I really think a lot of that has to do with the connected trail system. I didn't do the other table chart, pie chart, but it was very similar here. 98% of the city can walk to something. So we have a lot of yellow. We can at least walk to something. It may not be that neighborhood park and a trail that I want to, but I have access to something. It may be a homeowner's playground. It could be a short segment of trail. It could be the community center. But 98% can walk to something. And I looked at, we can also break this down by total population and by age group. And I just ran it for the kind of under 20 age group. So can our kids walk to parks? The thing that I did not mention is when we talk about walkability, we also truncate the service or cut off the service at major pedestrian roads. So we took into account that people aren't going to cross Eagle Road to go to a park on the other side. You're not going to send your kids across those those major pedestrian barriers, we call them, to go to a park on the other side. You gotta get in your car and drive them over there, or you gotta walk them over there. So the walkability really does take into account kind of those major pedestrian barriers. Again, alternative providers provide a great supplement to our current level of service in walkability. The neighborhood parks themselves meet that threshold, but the lack of trails in those neighborhoods or close to those neighborhoods keep us at that yellow level. And generally, those no service areas were on the edges of town. I guess I would talk about those no service areas. So we see some bands of gray. Just because there's gray doesn't mean we need to provide level of service in those areas. A lot of those areas are along the interstate, are industrial, are commercial. So I wouldn't be real concerned about some of those gray areas because they really are places that we don't need to provide level of service. So we took a brief look at the current trail system, and you can see that the kind of the red lines on here is our current trail system. In this case, the darker the red is the longer the trail. So we see some pretty bright red ones. Those are longer segments of trail. And it kind of goes down to some smaller ones that are a little bit more disconnected, but still they are trails. And then the gray dotted ones, that I don't know if you can see in the back, but those are the proposed trails that are currently in the GIS. So we have, you have published a map very similar to this. I noticed it today. So what trails have been planned in prioritizing those segments of trails that we want to build first is key to building that connected system. We currently have 22 miles of trails in the city, 13 miles of these little micro paths that help connect neighborhoods outside of the neighborhood or neighborhood to a school. There's 133 miles of proposed trails in your system. That's a big task. And so how do we prioritize those segments of trails? We'll talk about in the report, when we get to the final report, things like how do we get through developed parts of town. So as we build new subdivisions, we can kind of build that into the system of bringing them in. But what do we do about kind of downtown and where it's already developed? How can we provide trails or some sort of access connectedness in those parts of town? We'll also talk about beyond connecting one trail to another, we'll talk about how do you connect people to trails. We go to a lot of cities and they have great trail systems, but we hear the same thing. Trails are the number one thing that people want in the survey. And a lot of times it's that people don't know how to access a trail. They don't know where to go park. They don't have a safe place to go park if their car is going to get broke into. They don't have a trails map. They don't have a new fancy iPhone mapping system that tells them where that trail goes. So these are all things that will be discussed in the report. How do we connect people to trails? Maps and apps and trailheads and access points are all important. So based on all of my analysis, these were kind of the preliminary findings that were in my head as I went through this. Obviously, just like the survey, we need to improve our recreational connectivity. We need to connect our trails to each other. We need to connect our trails to our parks. We need to connect our trails to our schools. There are some ways, you have big enough neighborhood parks that we can add components, we can add things to those parks to create a higher level of service, to turn those areas purple if we can't connect those with the trail. So you can improve those yellow areas by adding things to existing parks. You can improve your level of service and not have to add new parkland. Again, this is a component-based system. It matters about what's in your parks as much as it does the acreage of your parks. We should work with our alternative providers, whether it's schools, whether it's HOAs, but to kind of standardize that level of service that they're providing. Make sure that they put in a decent playground. Make sure they put in benches and shade shelters in their parks. As these new subdivisions come into our system, we're going up to 118,000 people. You're going to have some new subdivisions. So what kind of parks are they putting in? And lastly, Art talked a lot about programming and some of these new programming ideas. But as you add new components to your parks, make sure that those spaces can be programmed. So if we want to start offering pickleball is a big trend across the country. You know, if we want to start programming pickleball, do we have any current pickleball courts? And if we don't, and we need level of service in an existing park to bump it up a little bit, let's put a pickleball court in there and not only provide that as level of service, but also a chance to go program.
So then we talked about, kind of recurring themes. And, those things that we continue to hear over and over again that, as we go through the focus group process, through the survey, through the inventory level of service, as we talk with staff and talk with the elected officials, these themes, we start to reach what we call saturation, when we start hearing these recurring themes. And so what we've got through this process and where we are right now is that connectivity and pathways, it's kind of a no-brainer. We hear that all the time. We hear it from all of the levels. Maintaining what we have, making sure that the current system is maintained at a high level, at the high level that it's currently maintained at. Keeping up with the rapid community growth. And we saw, from 2000 to 2010, the population doubled, and it's about to double again, as we're moving through. So you're having very high growth, making sure that we're keeping up with that, both in providing services as well as being able to maintain those services and those amenities. Land acquisition for future parks. So whether that is, the city acquiring land or acquiring land through the HOAs for neighborhood parks, those, making sure that there is available green space for future parks. This thought of an indoor recreation facility kept coming up. That there's a need for more indoor space, more activity space, indoor. Communication, marketing, and technology is one of those reoccurring themes. Making sure that we're communicating effectively, making sure that we're staying up with technology, online registration, park apps, all of those pieces kind of fall into that. Organizational development and staffing, making sure that as we grow, as we increase parkland, as we increase programming, that your staffing levels need to continue to increase so that you're maintaining that same quality of program and that same quality and level of service that you're providing. And then also this kind of a dedicated revenue source. We talked about the impact fees, being able to provide funding. But as you begin to build out, there's going to be a time that those impact fees are not going to be as great. And so looking at kind of what are some of those other areas that we can find dedicated revenue sources, cost recovery, and those things kind of through the process. And then programming. Programming can continue to come out. Additional programming. Again, non-sports activities. There seems to be we've kind of reached a saturation point with some of the sports activities. But looking at those non-sports activities, both for adults as well as for young people, community-wide special events. Again, they are one of those important pieces to folks. Aquatic programming, teen programs, that outdoor recreation and adventure programming came up several times. Arts in the park. See a beautiful piece that's in one of the parks now. Senior programming, and then cultural performing arts programs. Again, looking at those kind of non-traditional recreation programs and those enrichment community valued programming. And so that's really what we've heard so far. Those are kind of our findings. And So do you have any questions about anything that we've talked about? We've said, I know we've kind of given you a lot of information in kind of a short period of time. And, one of the things that we'll be doing again is, we'll be posting some of our results to MindMixer. We'll be posting some of those topics and hoping to generate some additional conversation around some of those things. We will be, coming back to kind of do some additional research. Rec and Land Design will be working on some park designs, and so we'll be in and out again, continuing to gather public information and continuing to kind of move this process along. No questions?
It's got to be some
Great.
questions.
Anything surprise you?
Yeah, and did you have an aha moment? Did anything, was anything that kind of came up that you weren't expecting to hear or see?
I'm just impressed with the level of information in it yet.
Thanks.
Very nice.
Thank you. Well, thank you all very much, and look forward to continuing the work.
Thank you, Art. Lots to digest in there for us. So we're somewhere between a third and halfway done with the process. So there's still more to do. Like I mentioned, the open link survey is still open. So if you haven't taken it and want to, please do. For those of you that have taken it, thank you. Hopefully you can see that we are listening to what you have to say. When the mayor walked up and handed me a paper, she asked me to please introduce my parks commissioners. And so if you're a Parks Commissioner, would you please raise your hand so I don't have to scan the crowd for you? And I'm a former Parks Commissioner right over here as well. So our Parks Commissioners are volunteers that help us look at trends and needs and help us prioritize what we take forward to the City Council. And if you would, please help me give them a round of applause. We also have some City Council members. I know I see Luke Kavanaugh over here, Keith Bird over here, David Zaremba in the back. Welcome to our council members, and please help me thank them for coming. And then the mayor also wanted me to point out that as we wrap this up, there are several departments represented here besides parks. We've got Bruce Chatterton with Community Development, Bill Neri with over here with the City Attorney's Office. I see Patty in the back from our HR department. I know Police and Fire all have reps. So as we wrap up, if you have questions that may pertain to any of our departments, feel free to engage us. With that, we are going to roll into the third and final presentation of the night. I want to introduce to you Scott Curtis. Scott Curtis is with the YMCA. I know many of you are here tonight because you're curious and interested with what's going on with the South Meridian YMCA project. I want to acknowledge the Hills back here who are the donors of the land. I just say, on behalf of the city, we're excited to be a part of the partnership to bring a park to that area, to that complex. But I'm going to, without further ado, turn the time over to Scott to give you an update on where things are at today.
Thanks, Steve. So I'm the third and final speaker, so I'm between you all and the door, I guess, which is between you all and some fresh, cooler air, I think. All right. So do we need to do some calisthenics here for a couple minutes?
Yes.
Well, we'll bring those here in a couple years. I just want to say it's really my privilege to be here. I had the absolute pleasure, and one of the joys of my life was the day that a YMCA was opened in a community that had never had one. And I will never forget that day, nor the years after that, and seeing what it did. It is an absolute privilege to be here in the community where I was raised and thinking about this possibility here. So thank you for having me here. I will be brief because Steve said we end at 8:30, right? Is that what he said to you all? Is that the schedule? I'll be brief. I'll be done by 8. And I will stay as long as anybody has questions, if you like. I'm going to try and go through this quickly. I know some folks want to just hear what's the timeline, what are we looking at, and I will try to get there. We also talked about the importance, Steve and I did, that every time we do one of these presentations, there's a lot of folks that haven't heard anything about this, so we've got to do a little background, and I will go through that as quickly as possible. creation of a YMCA, historically, the Y was founded in 1841 in England. It came to the United States with a sea captain that brought it to a small part of Boston and New York, and then it's basically spread from there with passionate individuals. The modern process for a Y coming in, and the Y is, when we're talking about the Y, a lot of people think about the facilities, but the Y is really a movement. It's about programs. You're sitting in a YMCA program space. For 5 years, we ran a child care center in this gym and on that stage. When you leave tonight, you're going to see the child care center that's now at the edge of the parking lot because the partnership grew so much. And we never know where we're going to end up, but the YMCA is about programming that makes a difference in people's lives. In this case, we're talking about a facility. And the way facilities are often brought, the modern process, it's not just a sea captain showing up and making that happen. It always starts with community passion and alignment. It's got to meet community needs, and there needs to be a groundswell of community support for it to happen. There's got to be volunteer involvement, and that's essential to bringing a Y. The Y does not expand into areas where it thinks it needs to go. It goes where there are volunteers saying, we want to make this happen. Because not only are volunteers essential to getting a Y open, they're essential once it's open. We need volunteers in the programs. We need volunteers on all the committees. We're a volunteer-run organization. My bosses are volunteers, right? So we need people involved from the very beginning, and that never ends. Usually there's some sort of a request from the community. Hey, we'd like to talk about getting a Y going. A market study, a feasibility study. Market study says, is a Y viable there? Are there really needs? You guys just saw a lot of great market study work. Feasibility study is, can we get it built? Are there enough dollars available to get it built? So two different things. And then obviously you need to have a YMCA charter with board approval, and then a capital campaign and construction. I'm going to rush through this stuff. So, but really, for us, the Y is about uncovering potential and doing that together. And folks saying, this is the potential we think we have, we want to tap into it. A little bit about the history of this, and I'm going to go through this really quickly. From 2006 to 2009, there was a Blue Ribbon Steering Group looking at bringing a YMCA to South Meridian, right? So there was a lot of work done then. That kind of hit the pause button with the economy changing, as well as some of those partnerships not going exactly in the direction that was needed. We had a feasibility study done just in the last couple of years across the entire valley. And one of the things that came back from that, it said, is your Y needs to expand, and the place it needs to expand is Meridian. We don't know where in Meridian, but that's where it needs to expand. It's the area of greatest need and greatest viability for the YMCA. We then took that, our board charged us with getting moving on that, and we did a market study that looked at various areas. It looked at North Meridian, South Meridian, Nampa, East Boise, and basically was trying to say, what is the needs, right? And we actually we thought it was going to be sort of split between North Meridian and South Meridian. And I know I'm in South Meridian right now, so you'll like this answer, but it really came back more powerfully that South Meridian was the areas of greatest need. It also said a Y would probably be viable in North Meridian, but we can only do one of these at a time, right? So that really pushed us in this direction. As a matter of fact, the research firm, and we always hire folks from outside the area that specialize in recreation facilities and community development. The research group told us that it was the highest unmet need they'd seen in a community of that size south of the freeway. It was double what the scores normally are here. So that really got us driving. Continuing conversations with the City of Meridian. We've been talking to City of Meridian for years, and the city's been talking to us for years about the possibility, dealing with growth, talking about Boys and Girls Club. Is there a partnership possibility there? Another great organization. The city, we're looking to have a field house. How do we get that? National trends, certainly our YMCA's partnering with municipalities. I don't know of any YMCA's being built right now that aren't a partnership with multiple groups, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We certainly saw that when we did some benchmarking up in the Seattle-Tacoma area. We saw 7 YMCA's over the course of 2 days, and all of them involved some level of partnership. So the City of Meridian is certainly a huge partner in this. The school piece, we weren't even imagining when we first started talking about this. We love being located close to schools. But we didn't know that Marty and Dixie were going to come forward, and that was going to be tied to property that was right next to property being developed by Brighton Corporation. And Brighton's donating 8 acres for an elementary school. And their property is contiguous with that, and they had a dream of having a city park there, and having green space and kids playing, right? And that's really essential to this project, having green space and kids playing. So that sort of happened relatively quickly, and they'll smile and say this was relatively quickly how it went from just talking about a possibility to partners coming together and saying, you know what, not only can we be located by each other, let's be connected. Let's have an elementary school built with a YMCA. right? And so that's where that went. As you all know, West Ada School District passed its bond election, which has actually accelerated the timeline for this. So that is good news. The park, again, Marty and Dixie, their dream was to have a park there. It was not initially to have a YMCA there, right? And so they've been in conversations with the rec district, West Ada Recreation District, as well as the City of Meridian about that possibility. So again, great partners being at the table talking about this. At that point, we did not know the library was going to come along and say, we are really looking for an opportunity to build a branch. They lease space currently south of the freeway, and they're looking to expand with the library. They're really looking at coming back to you all with a bond election for this library, but it will probably involve more than one library. They're looking at doing a bond election for more than one for this community to meet its needs. That will be in November. And finally, we believe there's going to be probably a healthcare partner providing some level of service at this location. Right, we can't speak to that right now in terms of what we're talking with a lot of folks about what can we do to envision health instead of being sick care, that it's health care and wellness care and preventing as much as possible sickness. And when people have injuries or have issues, getting them back as quickly as possible to the lives they want and the lifestyles they want. So partnership, it's all about partnerships. As I said before, why wouldn't it be being built without partnerships? There's certainly a capital financial case for the partnering. Shared space with the library, shared space with the school, donated land. Parking is an incredible expense savings to do this all together. There's also a financial case for the operating, sharing space, sharing staff, which is a huge piece for us for the longevity of a project. We're not building a YMCA to be open for a few years. We'd like to be open for 50 years at a minimum, and that's how we're thinking about this partnership. Value proposition just speaks to what a community saves when it partners, when it invests on the front end, and the relative skill of the YMCA in operating things like this for a community. Most recreation centers around the nation that are run by municipalities recoup about 50 cents on the dollar. Right? That's just the reality of how we do business, and we tend to be, this is our area that we're good at. So we're here for building community together. At the YMCA, we talk about 3 areas, and we think they certainly came out in your survey. These are our areas of focus. We are for youth development. You know, every child deserves to be developed. Right? We're also for healthy living, and everybody knows this about the why. But we feel it is a mission to improve the nation's health and well-being. And finally, social responsibility. Giving back, providing support to our neighbors, is what makes the difference in this country, and will continue to make the difference. And we're very proud to say that folks that are members of the Y, we talk to them about volunteering, we talk to them about donating, and we get them more involved in their community. So where's this project going? I'm going to skip a story and talk a little bit about the facility. I think people are interested in that. First of all, a little overhead of the property. For those that aren't familiar with where we're talking about, this is Eagle Road, and this is Amity. Marty and Dixie live right here. They'll be driving down this road here in a minute, coming home. And the property we're talking about is right here. Right? This is the property to the south that's being developed by Brighton Corporation, and where the elementary school will lie. Okay? This is probably kind of hard to see. I put this on there, though, because I wanted people to get a sense right away that we're not talking about separate buildings. This colored part right here, this is just a mock-up of the elementary school. They would enter from this side is where the elementary school would be. This part of the property, which is actually to the east, is 14 feet higher than the property over here. So the idea is the elementary school enters on the ground floor and has a second floor connected to the Y. The YMCA entrance would be over here where the library entrance is on the first floor, so it would actually be the second floor of the school, how those connect. Again, I didn't say this yet, but don't get overly attached to any part of the design because this is all in flux. Okay, so here's a little bit of what we're looking at right now. This is the latest thing. Steve and I saw this yesterday. This is to the south. This shows the elementary school. It's a 2-story elementary school with contiguous space with the Y. You see the one of the basketball courts actually connected to the school. We would build that for the school, and they would operate their PE programs within the YMCA. Right now we're looking at a large gym facility, health and fitness space. Obviously there's multiple floors here, so what you're seeing is just the middle floor. This represents an aquatic center as yet to be designed. The green thing there, that's a dream of having a track in this thing that is like nothing else. And actually a hill track, a track that would actually cover more than one floor of the building. so that people, if they wanted a hill workout, could do that, and it would be all ADA compliant. Very important to the Y that everyone has access to this. Okay. This is just some images of things going on around the country, kind of dreaming big. This is what a large court facility looks like, some of the school features. They're doing cool things in aquatics. They're putting climbing walls actually in the aquatic center and things like that. That's all the dreaming that's happening right now. I'm going to skip over it pretty quickly, even though that's probably what you most want to see. One of the stipulations from the Hills is that the YMCA includes an outdoor splash pad as part of the project, so that's definitely being included in the design. We're even talking about having some sort of a water slide that actually leaves the building and comes back into it. You can see that on the far right. So anyway, we're having a lot of fun, and it's been fun with the community to have people come to these dreaming sessions. So, fundraising. Notice what I put underneath that. We believe that fundraising is all about friend raising. And we are not looking for folks to give gifts to a project that they don't believe in and aren't a part of. So for us, it's a slow process of having people understand the project, understand what the why is about, and then be willing to be a part of it financially. We have some challenges with fundraising, as everyone does, but we are working very hard. I will tell you, we've raised about $6 million so far. And we think that through the Y, through our connections, YMCA and philanthropic connections, we think we can raise about $13 million here, right? All of which will go to this project. There's a gap, though, between what we can raise and what it's going to cost to build this, right? And we don't know how that gap's going to close yet. And so I'm being very forthright. We're going to keep rolling. We're going to keep rolling with this and doing the best we can. Any of you that has an idea about that, we're happy to hear, okay? So the next steps. First of all, as I said at the beginning, this is going to depend on passionate, committed volunteers making this happen. That's the only way why it happens. Partnerships are the key, and I think some of those are yet to be realized, where some of the current ones will grow. Those partnerships and all the relationships are going to have to be built on trust. We're going to have to trust that we're all doing this for the right reason, for the betterment of the community. It requires a lot of give and take. It is a lot faster to go somewhere alone, right? You can always go a lot farther with partnerships, right? It just takes a little time. We are in the major gifts portion of this campaign, so we're really talking to top 20, top 30 folks and businesses and municipalities and groups that we think can make this project be a reality. There will at some point be a community campaign, and we will need everyone's help because we need everyone's buy-in. Timeline. The school has accelerated this very quickly. The elementary school is scheduled to break ground in August and open in August of 2016. So the day after the bond election, they actually moved our calendar up a year. So we're struggling, and the architects are pulling their hair out. We will not be ready to open a Y in August of 16. We can't build a Y that fast. One of the things we're looking at possibly doing is phasing this facility. So building part of it first, building the parts that are contiguous with the school, right, and some of the recreation first, based on what we can get done, but also based on what we have the funds for. Right? And so I have to be forthright with folks. I know I saw in that study, a lot of folks are talking about aquatics. That is the most difficult portion of the building to build. It's the most expensive to build. It's also the most expensive to operate. So that's one of the phases we're talking about. How do we get the dollars to really complete this thing all together? Ideally, we'd like to open it all at once and have Marty and Dixie go down the first water slide. Did I say that? Okay. So, questions? I know I talked quickly, and I'm already 4 minutes over. So, any questions for me? Just like you, man.
So good.
Yes, sir.
What's happening right now out there?
Have you been by there? Yeah. So there's a lot of activity in terms of the Brighton Corporation and the development going on just south of the YMCA. They are in complete fast forward because they're bringing the utilities and things like that in there for the neighborhood that are coming up to this project. So they're moving very quickly. I'm getting all of their lots placed and all the infrastructure in there. Right now we're working with the city. The city's being a great partner in terms of planning and zoning and annexation and all of the processes we have to go through to get a building permit so that the building can start in August. And land deeds. We're having a conversation about land deeds and all those tricky little things. Yes?
Eagle is a two-lane road and Amity is a two-lane road. So are there plans to expand roads at all for accommodate traffic?
Great question. So right now there's a traffic study going on through the highway district, and they'll be coming up with all those recommendations. The school, is putting a school in there. The Y is being built there, and one thing I did not mention to you is, just to the north of this property, right here, so this is Eagle, and this is Amity. Western Ada School District owns these 40 acres, and they have their next high school planned there. And so obviously it brings the synergy of this whole area together. But it also means there's some significant things like traffic studies and roadways that have to be looked at, and they're accelerating how they're looking at that. A high school is a whole different level, right, of stuff, so they're accelerating how that's being looked at right now. But it's a great question, and we have to take that into consideration. Yes, sir.
Scott, are they still having public meetings for public to voice their concerns for facilities and all that stuff that they have, or is that already?
I think you might be referring to the public meetings that were the design work? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So we finished those initial phases of designs. We've kind of gone into representation, having committees come in and take all that and try to boil it down. We will certainly still have public meetings as this project moves forward to talk with folks. But if there's particular concerns, we ask that they get brought to us, now. We need to address them. Anything else? Pardon me? I would like to thank Ken for operating the computers tonight and for all that.
Folks, any other questions for any of the department directors? Town hall questions? No? Ms. Marks?
Directed to our Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Since HOAs are nonprofit entities, is there any way to work with the Parks and Rec department on getting playground equipment at a reasonable cost?
So you're talking about trying to get a playground for an HOA park. Probably not through the city, but we may have some potential resources through grants and things like that to share with you. Why don't we just talk one-on-one afterwards, and we're glad to talk some more. So I think we can probably end there, and we'll be available to chat with anyone one-on-one that wants to.
Folks, thanks for coming. Travel safe.